I was already halfway up the driveway when I heard it, her laugh. Sharp, high-pitched, dripping with the kind of cruelty you don't forget once it slices through you. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. Emily thought she had at least another 2 hours before I walked through that door. And because of that, she had let her mask slip in a way I had never seen before. I had forgotten my wallet at home. That's it. That's the only reason I came back. If I hadn't needed that stupid piece of leather and plastic, I would have stayed the fool a little longer, blind, dumb, the dutiful husband who paid the bills while his wife giggled about him behind closed doors. I didn't slam the car door. I didn't stomp my feet. I moved like a ghost across the porch, hearing every muffled word, every drunken giggle floating through the open kitchen window. You should have seen him, Courtney, Emily gasped, her words tumbling out between shrieks of laughter. He can't even last 5 minutes. 5. It's honestly pathetic. Her sister barked out a laugh in return, and I froze, my hand hovering over the front doorknob. Something primal twisted in my gut. Not rage, not yet. It was something colder, cleaner. A click in my brain that said, "Oh, so that's how it is." I didn't walk in right away. I stood there, listening as Emily continued. She wasn't just making a joke. She was eviscerating me, talking about how a real man knew how to handle her, how I was too boring now, too predictable, how she deserved more. Every word was a scalpel, every giggle another stitch torn open. I didn't need to hear more, but I stayed. I needed the burn. I needed the betrayal to sear itself into my skin so deep that I'd never forget it, not when I finally decided how this was going to end. They were drinking wine. Expensive stuff, from the clink of the bottles. My birthday was last month. I hadn't even gotten a damn card. I backed off the porch, walking silently back to my car like a man watching his own funeral procession. I sat behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Breathing in through my nose, slow and controlled, as a plan started forming in my head. Not rage. Not a screaming match. Emily didn't deserve the satisfaction. She wanted chaos? She wanted drama? I'd give her silence so loud it would crush her. I didn't drive back to work. I went to the little diner down the street. Sat in the corner booth, sipping burnt coffee, feeling the muscles in my jaw twitch every time her words replayed in my mind. 5 minutes. Pathetic. Predictable. I didn't know exactly how long I sat there, staring at the cracked vinyl seat across from me, but by the time I moved again, the sun was beginning to sink lower in the sky, bleeding orange over everything like a wound. I picked up my phone, scrolled past Emily's name. I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. She thought she was clever. She thought she was invincible. That smug, sneering little voice in my head, her voice, needed to keep talking a little longer. Needed to feel safe. Because once Emily thought she had won, once she really believed it, that's when I'd rip the floor out from under her. I called my buddy, Nate, instead. A divorce attorney. A damn good one. We hadn't talked much recently. You know how it goes. Life gets busy. But the second he heard my voice, steady and cold in a way it had never been before, he knew something was wrong. You tell me where and when, man, Nate said. I'll be there. I told him soon. Very soon. But not yet. First, I needed to watch her fall deeper into the trap she didn't even know she was setting. I needed her to keep laughing, keep mocking me, keep underestimating me. Because when I made my move, it would be swift, brutal, final. I went home around 8. When I walked in, Emily was sitting on the couch in her pajama shorts, scrolling on her phone, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't even look up. Forgot something earlier, I said, my voice perfectly even. She hummed without interest, thumb still flicking over the screen. I stared at her for a long moment, cataloging everything. The way her hair was messy but in that perfect, Instagrammable way. The way she didn't even bother to hide her disdain anymore, as if I had become just another piece of furniture she didn't notice anymore. That was fine. She didn't have to notice me now. Soon enough, she'd notice nothing but the wreckage I left behind. And she'd have all the time in the world, every single empty, bitter day, to wonder how she ever thought she could laugh at me and walk away unscathed. Not this time. Not ever again. The next morning, everything felt surreal. You know that sharp, metallic taste in your mouth after you've been punched, but your body hasn't caught up to the pain yet? That's how it felt standing in the kitchen, making coffee while Emily floated around like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek. A quick, distracted brush of her lips, like you do to a dog you barely remembered feeding. Busy day today, she chirped, stuffing her gym bag with more than just workout clothes. She had packed makeup, perfume, a pair of heels tucked into the bottom. I caught the glint of red lace hidden under her folded leggings. She was dressing for someone, all right. It just wasn't me. I stirred my coffee slowly. Big workout? I asked, careful to keep my voice light, casual, almost amused. She blinked at me, caught off guard for half a second. Then that fake smile snapped back into place. Yeah, new boot camp class. You know, gotta keep things spicy. I nodded, taking a slow sip, my mind already racing. Spicy. She said it like a joke, like she wasn't already rotting the marriage from the inside out. I decided in that moment, I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I wasn't going to sit there, letting her gut me piece by piece while pretending nothing was wrong. No, I was going to let her build her little fantasy world. The fake gym classes, the secret meetups, the lies. And when the walls were high enough, I'd bring the whole damn castle crashing down. She breezed out the door a few minutes later, yelling something about being late. I stood there for a long time after the door slammed, listening to the echo of her heels clicking down the driveway, each step feeling like a countdown to her own personal apocalypse. I called Nate the second she pulled away. You ready? He asked. His voice was sharp now, all business. He knew this wasn't just about filing some paperwork. Almost, I said. But I want her to show her true colors first. I want it in writing. There was a pause. Then, you thinking what I think you're thinking? Exactly, I said, my mouth curling into a smile I hadn't felt in months. Surveillance. Nate chuckled low. You're a cold bastard when you want to be. I like it. An hour later, I was sitting in a dingy office above a pawn shop, shaking hands with a guy named Rick who looked like he hadn't slept since the Clinton administration. Private investigator. Expensive. Discreet. Ruthless. Everything I needed. You want proof, Rick said, leaning back in his squeaky chair. Text messages, photos, video. All of it, I said. And I want it airtight. No doubts. No loopholes. Rick grinned, revealing a gold tooth that somehow made him look even sleazier. You got it. First tails on the house. You're going to want to see what she's really up to. When I got home later that afternoon, Emily was back already, lounging on the couch in yoga pants and a tank top, pretending to scroll through Pinterest or whatever facade she thought she was maintaining. She looked up at me and smiled like she hadn't just spent her afternoon wrapping herself around another man. How was your day? She asked sweetly. Productive, I said. And it was the truth. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her fake innocence. Every soft breath she took made my stomach churn. I had loved her once. God, had I loved her, but whatever bond we'd had was dead now. She'd butchered it, laughed about it, tossed it in the trash with the same careless hands she now tucked under her cheek like a sleeping child. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbing my phone from the nightstand. A new text waited from Rick. Got something. You're going to want to see this. Call me when you can. My heart pounded in my ears, but my hands stayed steady. I didn't call him that night. No, I wasn't ready yet. I needed to sleep. What little I could, because tomorrow the cracks in her perfect little world would start to show. Tomorrow, Emily would start feeling the ground shift under her feet without even realizing it. And I'd be right there, smiling, as it all began to crumble. This wasn't just about catching her. This was about destroying her delusions. Brick by lying brick. The next morning, the house felt colder. Not in temperature, the heater hummed away like always, but in the way the walls seemed to lean back, watching me, waiting for the next move. Emily was already up when I came downstairs, dressed in a way that screamed effortless perfection. Hair done, makeup flawless, the just throwing something on look that actually took 40 minutes and 2 YouTube tutorials to achieve. She was humming to herself in the kitchen, frying eggs, flipping pancakes, playing the role of the devoted wife like she was auditioning for a damn sitcom. I sat down at the table, hands clasped together, studying her. She was good. I'll give her that. The way she smiled at me, called me babe, asked if I wanted 1 pancake or 2. It would have convinced any man who hadn't stood outside his own home and listened to his wife shred his dignity to pieces the day before. Big plans today? I asked casually, cutting into the food she set in front of me. She flicked her hair over her shoulder, pretending to think about it. Not really. Might go shopping with Courtney later. Hit the gym. You know, normal stuff. I smiled around my fork. Normal stuff. Right. Sneaking around, meeting whoever she was warming her bed for these days. Yeah, totally normal. I checked my phone under the table. One new message from Rick. Meet me at noon. Got video? Perfect. I looked up, catching Emily watching me out of the corner of her eye. Was there a flicker of nervousness there? Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see it. Either way, I didn't show a thing. After breakfast, she floated upstairs to get ready for her day out, and I slipped out quietly, grabbing my jacket off the hook by the door. Rick's office was even more of a dive in the daylight. The sun streamed through grimy windows, highlighting the dust motes swirling in the stale air. He sat behind his battered desk, a thumb drive spinning between his fingers. You sure you want to see this? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Show me. He plugged the drive into a battered laptop and turned the screen toward me. There she was, Emily, walking into a hotel lobby with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit like he was born in it. They didn't even try to be subtle. She kissed him right there by the elevators, not a peck, not a quick glance around. No, it was the kind of kiss you give someone when you don't care who sees because you think you're invincible. Then another clip. Different day. Emily in the passenger seat of his car, laughing, tossing her hair like a teenager trying to impress the quarterback. Another clip. Holding hands over dinner, feeding each other bites of dessert like the world had disappeared around them. Every second felt like a hammer blow, but I didn't flinch. Not even when Rick clicked on the last file, Emily leading him by the hand into a hotel room, disappearing inside without a glance back. I sat there for a long moment after the screen went black, feeling the slow, steady burn of betrayal in my chest. Rick cleared his throat. This enough for you? More than enough, I said, standing up. I paid him in cash, more than he asked for. It wasn't about the money. It was about having every nail ready for the coffin I was about to build around her life. Driving home, I rolled down the windows even though it was freezing, needing the cold air to keep me grounded. My hands itched to act, to explode, but that wasn't the way. Emily wanted chaos? She would never see mine coming. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was gone. Out shopping with Courtney, no doubt. Probably using her sister as a cover to sneak off with her suited lover. I walked into the house, the silence crashing over me like a wave. Every photo on the walls, every throw pillow she had painstakingly arranged, every scented candle burning on the counter, it all felt hollow now. Fake. I went upstairs to our bedroom, opened her closet, looked at all the dresses, the rows of shoes, the bags she had guilt-tripped me into buying over the years. She had built a kingdom on lies. And now I was going to tear it down, one jewel at a time. I grabbed the manila folder I had picked up from Nate's office after meeting Rick. Inside were the documents we had been preparing, divorce papers, financial audits, a list of every account Emily thought she was going to bleed dry when she made her grand escape. Spoiler alert, she wasn't getting a damn cent. I placed the folder in my desk drawer, locking it with a small click that sounded too loud in the empty house. Emily thought she was untouchable, that she was playing me for a fool. But fools don't walk into wars they're ready to win. And Emily? She had no idea she was already standing on the trapdoor. Emily got home just before dinner, arms full of shopping bags, face flushed with fake excitement. She dumped her haul on the kitchen table, pulling out dresses and shoes like some reality show trophy wife, narrating every item as if I gave a damn. Look at this one, babe. Isn't it cute? She chirped, holding up a skimpy red dress that barely covered anything. Got it on sale, too. I smiled at her. Not the kind of smile I used to give, not the warm, proud kind. No, this one was thin, sharp, hollow inside. She didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care anymore. Either way, it suited me just fine. Looks great, I said simply, sipping my beer as I leaned against the counter. She twirled once, laughing, basking in the attention she thought she was earning. If only she knew. If only she had any idea what was already in motion, ticking down behind the scenes like a bomb under her perfect little life. As she babbled about dinner plans with Courtney, a blatant lie, but whatever, I nodded and played along. I wasn't ready yet. Timing was everything. This wasn't just about catching her red-handed. It was about making sure when she fell, there would be no way back up. "Hey, honey," I said casually as she bent over her bags, pretending not to notice how she made sure I got a good view. "How about you take a few days off work next week? We should do something. Just the two of us." She straightened, blinking at me like I had just suggested we move to Mars. For a heartbeat, something flickered across her face. Panic? Guilt? Whatever it was. She wiped it away so fast you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. "Oh, that sounds nice," she said, voice a little too bright. "But next week's crazy at work. You know how it is." "Yeah," I said slowly, holding her gaze. "I know exactly how it is." She smiled again, showing all her teeth, the picture of a wife who had nothing to hide. And yet, underneath, she was rotting. I could smell it now, that stink of deceit thick in the air. After dinner, a half-hearted stir-fry she barely touched, she retreated upstairs with her phone glued to her hand. Probably texting him. Probably making plans for the next fake girls' night she thought she was getting away with. I stayed downstairs, nursing my beer, letting the darkness settle around me. Rick sent another text. "Tomorrow's the day if you want the big catch. They're meeting again. Got the location. Perfect." I deleted the message and poured myself another drink, staring at the spot where Emily had sat minutes before. The chair still warm from her body, the ghost of her laughter still echoing through the room. I pictured her sitting across from him, smiling that same fake smile she gave me now. I pictured her whispering in his ear, using the same voice she once reserved for our anniversaries, our private jokes, our stolen moments together before everything curdled. It didn't hurt anymore. It burned. The next morning, I pretended everything was normal. Kissed her forehead as I left for work, acting every inch the clueless husband. She barely acknowledged it, already lost in her own lies. Instead of going to the office, I drove downtown and parked a block away from the hotel Rick had flagged. I had a perfect view of the entrance. I settled in, coffee in hand, phone on silent, waiting. At 11:32 a.m., Emily's car pulled up. She stepped out, wearing the red dress she had flaunted the night before, her legs flashing in the sunlight, her hair tumbling perfectly over her shoulders. She checked her reflection in the car window, adjusted her lipstick, then strode toward the doors without hesitation. 5 minutes later, he showed up. Mr. Tall, dark, and expensively groomed. He barely glanced around before slipping inside after her. I sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel so hard it creaked under my hands. This is what she thinks she deserves. This is what she thinks she's owed. Rick was already in place inside, recording everything. I didn't need to see it live. I trusted the bastard to get exactly what I needed. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes, breathing slow and deep. This wasn't the time for rage. Rage was messy. Rage gave them power. I wasn't here to rage. I was here to bury her. By the time I pulled out of the parking spot, the plan was sharper than ever in my mind. It clicked together piece by piece, a machine of pure, cold inevitability. I would let her keep digging. Every meeting, every lie, every whispered promise into another man's ear. And when she was standing knee-deep in the hole she had dug herself, when she was smiling because she thought she was free, that's when I would kick the dirt in on top of her. No yelling, no begging, just the quiet, crushing realization that she had gambled everything and lost it all. And I would be there to watch the light die in her eyes when she realized it was already too late. 10%. ChatGPT. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of rage that had cooled into something sharper, but because my mind wouldn't stop running through every step, every small detail of what was coming. Every thread had to be tied off, every weakness cut away. At dawn, while Emily was still curled up in bed, snoring lightly with her phone clutched in her hand like a child with a toy, I slipped downstairs. Sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and Nate's documents spread out beside me. It was time to move. Slowly. Precisely. First, the financials. I had already shifted most of our shared accounts into my private name weeks ago, under the guise of refinancing and lower interest rates. Emily, as usual, hadn't bothered reading the paperwork she signed. She trusted me, or rather, she was too distracted by her side life to care. The mortgage? In my name alone now. The joint savings? Gone. Split into protected accounts under my control. The credit cards? Frozen. New ones issued in my name only. By the time she realized anything was wrong, she'd be locked out of everything. I sipped my coffee, feeling more awake than I had in months. There was a cruel clarity to it, a purity in knowing exactly what you were doing and why. At 8:30, Emily finally stumbled downstairs, wrapped in a silky robe, yawning dramatically. "Morning," she mumbled, heading for the fridge. I smiled over the rim of my coffee mug. "Sleep well." She said, not even looking at me. Already scrolling through her phone, thumbing through text with that sly, unconscious grin that used to be reserved for me. I watched her a moment longer. Studied her. The way she laughed under her breath. The way she angled her body just so, showing off for someone who wasn't even there. Good, I thought. Stay comfortable. I checked the time. 30 minutes until Rick delivered the next batch of evidence, and something even better, a list of names. Because it turned out Mr. Tall, dark, and handsome wasn't the only one. Rick's last text had been brief, almost gleeful. Multiple guys. Different hotels. Different dates. Got it all. I wasn't surprised. Not really. Deep down, I had known that someone who could laugh about me like that, who could rip me apart so casually, wasn't capable of loyalty to anyone. Still, seeing it spelled out so plainly lit a slow-burning fuse in my gut. While Emily pranced around the kitchen, making smoothies and texting God knows who, I slipped outside, phone in hand, pacing the patio while I called Nate. "You ready?" he asked, no preamble. "Ready," I said. My voice was calm. Cold. He outlined the next steps, legal filings, asset locks, temporary restraining orders if needed. We'd move quietly. Fast. She wouldn't even know what hit her until she was standing in front of a locked door with nowhere left to run. I hung up just as Emily poked her head outside. "Hey babe," she said sweetly, "I'm meeting Courtney for brunch. Should be back late afternoon." I smiled so wide it almost hurt. "Have fun." She beamed, kissed the air in my general direction, and disappeared inside to get ready. I stayed outside, breathing in the crisp morning air, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders piece by piece. Today wasn't the end. Not yet. Today was just another step closer to letting her hang herself with her own rope. And when the knot tightened, when the bottom finally dropped out, Emily would finally understand what it felt like to be forgotten. Just another mistake in my rearview mirror. The afternoon dragged by like a slow, grinding wheel. Every tick of the clock felt louder than the last. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I let her exist in her little fantasy world, thinking I was just another dumb husband sitting at home, grateful for whatever scraps she tossed my way. Instead, I focused on finishing the quiet work that would turn her world inside out. The house we lived in, the one she bragged about to her friends, the one she thought she'd keep after the divorce she probably fantasized about while riding around with her little parade of lovers, it wasn't hers anymore. Nate had helped me push the final paperwork through last week. With a few quick filings and a friendly handshake from a real estate buddy, the deed was now locked in a trust under my sole control. Ironclad. Untouchable. She didn't know it yet, but she was already a guest in my house. By 3:30, Rick's second delivery arrived in my inbox. More footage. More texts. Screenshots. Names. One thread showed Emily chatting with a guy named Brent, gym trainer, mid-30s, looked like he lived on protein shakes and ego. Another showed her talking to someone named Anthony, a bartender from downtown who couldn't spell "you're" correctly if you spotted him the Y and the O. There was even a third guy, Kevin, who had the genius idea to send her shirtless mirror pics while flexing. Each conversation, each flirtation, each arrangement was like a fresh kick in the ribs. Not because I cared anymore. No, that part of me was gone. What hurt, in a weird, almost abstract way, was how cheap it all was. How small. She wasn't trading me in for something better. She was throwing away everything for these. It was pitiful, and it made my resolve sharper. I sat back in my chair, flipping through the screenshots, my mind moving fast. I didn't want just proof anymore. I wanted ruin. I wanted every single person she had conned, her family, her friends, everyone who thought Emily was some sweet, devoted wife, to see her exactly for what she was. And thanks to Rick, I had enough ammunition to burn her fake life to the ground and salt the earth. At 5 p.m., I heard her car pull into the driveway. Shopping bags rustled again as she stumbled inside, laughing about something on her phone, completely oblivious to the storm hanging right above her head. "Hey, babe," she called out, dumping her haul on the couch. I muted the laptop, closing it casually. "Hey, you have fun?" She shrugged like it was barely worth mentioning. Same old, same old." I smiled. "You must be tired. Why don't you take a nice, long bath? I'll order dinner tonight." Her eyes lit up like a child promised a snow day. "God, that sounds amazing. You're the best." I watched her bounce upstairs, texting furiously as she went, probably setting up her next shopping trip. While the tub filled and Emily sank into her bubble bath, I opened a secure file Nate had sent me, the preliminary divorce papers. No more drafts. No more hypotheticals. It was real now. All I had to do was pull the trigger. And God, it would be beautiful. I placed the printed copy into a plain envelope. No drama. No scene. Just cold, clinical inevitability. Tomorrow morning, she'd find it on the kitchen table. No warning. No goodbyes. Just the weight of her own choices, sitting there in black and white. Signed, sealed, and deadly silent. Tonight, I'd let her have her bubble bath. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'd make sure Emily's new life started exactly the way she earned it, drowning in the mess she made, alone. I barely slept that night, not because of nerves, those had long burned away, but because of the sheer, buzzing anticipation of it all. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of old wood settling, but it felt different now. Charged. Like every wall was holding its breath, waiting to watch her crumble. When the first gray light crept through the blinds, I was already downstairs, sipping black coffee at the kitchen table. The envelope sat in the center of the table like a loaded gun. Heavy. Final. Upstairs, I heard her moving around, the shower running, drawers opening and closing, her heels clacking against the hardwood as she picked through her closet, probably trying to decide which outfit would impress whichever idiot she was planning to meet today. I didn't move. I didn't even flinch when she came downstairs an hour later, all dolled up, practically vibrating with the smug energy of someone who thought they were getting away with murder. Her eyes landed on the envelope immediately. She paused, her smile faltering just for a second before she plastered it back on. "What's this?" she asked, tilting her head in a way that used to be cute, back when I was stupid enough to fall for it. "Something for you," I said, voice calm, almost kind. She picked it up slowly, like she could sense the weight of it but didn't know why. Her manicured nails tore the flap, and she slipped the papers out, scanning them quickly. I watched it happen, the change in her. First confusion, then disbelief. Then the color drained from her face, leaving her looking almost translucent in the morning light. You're filing for divorce?" she croaked, blinking rapidly as if the words themselves were a trick. "Already filed," I said, taking another sip of coffee. "You'll find all the details inside." She flipped through the pages, her hands starting to shake. But we can work this out. We're just going through a rough patch." I almost laughed at the audacity of it. Rough patch? Was that what she called screwing half the town behind my back? Instead, I leaned back in my chair, steady, unbothered. "You should really read everything carefully, Em. Especially the parts about asset division." She skimmed frantically, her breath catching as she realized what I had done. The house? Mine. The accounts? Sealed. Her access to everything she thought she could leech off me for the next decade? Gone. "No," she whispered, the papers trembling in her hands. "You can't do this." "I already did," I said simply. Her eyes snapped up to mine, wide, frantic now. But alimony. I'm entitled." "You're entitled to exactly what you earned," I said, standing up and fixing her with a look so cold it made her flinch. Which is nothing. The silence between us stretched taut and heavy. I could see her brain scrambling, trying to pivot to salvage something. "You're overreacting," she hissed finally, the mask slipping. "All couples go through things. You're throwing away everything we built." I stepped closer, not touching her, just letting her feel the weight of what she no longer had. "You threw it away, Emily. You. Not me. You laughed about it. You bragged about it." Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked like a fish gasping on dry land. "You didn't just cheat on me," I continued, my voice low, almost tender. "You made a joke out of me. Out of us. She finally found her voice, but it was small, broken. I didn't mean it. It didn't mean anything. Save it for someone who cares, I cut in, grabbing my keys from the counter. You'll be served officially later today. Rick's dropping off the rest of the documents. You have 48 hours to vacate the house. But she choked, tears starting to spill now. I didn't stay to watch her cry. I didn't need her apologies, her excuses, her crocodile tears. I walked out the door, stepping into the crisp morning air, feeling lighter than I had in years. Behind me, the house I had paid for, the life I had built, was finally purging itself of the rot that had nearly destroyed it. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. And Emily? She was already a ghost, fading faster with every step I took away from her. I didn't look back as I drove away. Didn't care if she was sobbing on the floor, smashing furniture, or dialing up whatever poor fool she thought could save her. That part of my life, the begging, the lies, the endless humiliations I hadn't even known I was suffering, was dead now. Dead and buried. I had someplace else to be anyway. Nate had arranged everything. We were meeting at his office downtown. High-rise building, 15th floor, perfect view of the city. It felt symbolic, being up so high, watching everything from above while Emily's world collapsed somewhere below me. When I walked into the conference room, Nate stood up and clapped me on the back. His grin was sharp, proud. You ready to finish this? I nodded once, silent. More ready than I had ever been. On the table in front of him were 3 neatly stacked piles of paper, each one an instrument of pure, surgical destruction. Here's the financial lockout, he said, tapping the first stack. She's frozen out of everything. No access. No leverage. He moved to the next pile. Here's the property transfer confirmation. House, vehicles, everything that mattered, secured under your name, beyond any contest. And then the last one. Nate's grin widened. And this is the best part. The evidence package. Copies of everything Rick dug up. Every text, every video, every slimy little secret she thought she was clever enough to hide. I flipped through the binder slowly, page after page of infidelity in high definition. It was almost laughable. Emily hadn't just betrayed me. She'd turned it into a lifestyle. Different men, different days, sometimes overlapping. She wasn't just a cheater. She was a serial liar, reckless to the core. The weight of it hit me all at once, but not with pain. No, it was freedom. Cold, clean, absolute freedom. Nate leaned in. Now, if she tries to fight the divorce, if she tries to ask for anything, spousal support, property, whatever, we drop this binder in front of a judge. Open and shut. I closed the binder carefully, savoring the solid finality of it. Let's serve her, I said. He laughed, pulling out his phone. Already done. Process servers at your place now. I sat back in the chair, exhaling slowly as the realization sank deeper into my bones. It was happening. It was real. Right now, Emily was probably opening the door expecting an Amazon package or maybe one of her greasy little boyfriends. Instead, she was getting slapped with the legal equivalent of a freight train. I could almost see it. Her face crumpling as the reality set in. No money, no house, no leverage, no escape. By the time Nate wrapped up the last few instructions, it was nearly noon. I walked out of the office feeling lighter than I had in years. The city buzzed around me, cars honking, people rushing by. But inside, I was perfectly still, untouchable. I grabbed lunch at a corner diner, sitting alone by the window, nursing a black coffee and a sandwich. Every once in a while, I caught myself smiling. Really smiling. The way I hadn't smiled in years. My phone buzzed once. A number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. Then another buzz. Emily's number. Ignored again. I wasn't interested in hearing whatever pathetic script she was scrambling to read from now. The apologies, the fake tears, the recycled excuses about how it didn't mean anything. About how we could fix this. There was nothing left to fix. She had lit the match herself. All I had done was build the pyre higher. Sitting there, staring out at the busy street, I realized something else, something bigger. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about me. About never again allowing someone to shrink me down, make me small enough to fit inside the tiny, miserable life they wanted to trap me in. I paid the check, left a good tip, and stepped back into the cold January air. The day wasn't over yet. There was still one more thing I needed to do before I could finally, truly walk away. Something Emily would never see coming. And it would be the final nail in the coffin she dug for herself. By the time I pulled back into the driveway, the sun was already low, casting long shadows across the lawn. The house looked the same, calm, normal, peaceful even. You'd never guess the kind of war that had just detonated inside it. Emily's car was still there. For a second, I wondered if she was packing. Maybe she was upstairs right now, cramming her designer shoes and overpriced makeup into suitcases, desperate to hold on to something. Maybe she was still frozen in shock, pacing from room to room, trying to convince herself this was all just a bad dream she could sweet-talk her way out of. Good. Let her stew. Let her feel every second of it. I unlocked the front door and walked inside. The smell of her expensive candles still hung heavy in the air, lavender and something fake, something trying too hard to feel peaceful. It turned my stomach now. I heard her before I saw her. Small, shuffling footsteps in the living room. When I rounded the corner, there she was, sitting on the couch surrounded by open suitcases and piles of clothes. Her face was blotchy, her eyes puffy and red. She looked smaller somehow, like the mask of the confident, giggling Emily had been peeled away, leaving something weak and crumbling underneath. She jumped up the second she saw me, dropping a bundle of shirts. "Please," she started, her voice cracked and desperate. "Please, can we just talk?" I stood there a moment, letting the silence stretch, watching her squirm, watching her realize there was no script that could save her this time. "There's nothing left to say," I said calmly, setting my keys on the counter. "I made a mistake," she blurted out, stepping toward me like I was a cliff edge she could grab onto before she fell. I was confused. "You were distant. I didn't know how to reach you anymore." Her words tumbled over each other, frantic, pathetic. "You didn't even try," I said, voice low. "You didn't want to fix anything. You just wanted something new, something easier." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, struggling to find the right lie, the right twist that would undo everything. "You don't understand," she cried, tears spilling now. "It didn't mean anything. I was lonely, lonely." I laughed then, a sharp, bitter sound that made her flinch. "You weren't lonely, Emily. You were greedy. You had a good life, a loyal husband, a home, and it still wasn't enough." She sank down onto the couch again, burying her face in her hands. I watched without pity. "Who else, Emily?" I asked after a moment. She froze. "How many others?" I pressed, stepping closer, my shadow falling over her like a guillotine. She didn't answer right away, just let out a broken sob. "3, I guessed. 4. We're sobbing. More than that." She nodded, tiny, shameful. I nodded too, feeling the last shred of emotion I had for her, the last frayed thread of the life we'd built, snap clean. "Unbelievable," I said, almost to myself. "You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." No, she gasped. I love you. I do. I made mistakes." "You don't love anyone," I said, voice like ice. "Not even yourself." She reached out then, a pathetic little motion like she could somehow bridge the distance now with a touch. I stepped back. "No more second chances," I said flatly. "No more talks. No more pretending. You're out. 48 hours. Whatever you don't take with you stays here." "But I have nowhere to go," she sobbed, sliding off the couch onto her knees like some tragic movie scene. "Not my problem," I said, turning away. I walked upstairs without another word, her broken sobs chasing me up the steps. In the master bedroom, I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, breathing deeply. It was done. The papers were filed. The assets were locked. The evidence was archived. All that remained now was time, the slow, grinding fall of someone who had spent too long thinking they were untouchable. And tomorrow, when the full consequences of what she'd done finally hit her, it would be time for the final blow. The one she never saw coming. The one she would never recover from. I woke the next morning before sunrise, the house wrapped in that strange, heavy silence that always comes after something breaks. You don't hear it shatter at first, not really. You feel it. In the walls. In the floors. In the way the light sits wrong on the furniture. I showered, dressed, and packed a small overnight bag. Not because I was running. No, I was already standing on the ashes of everything she tried to burn down, but because today wasn't about fighting her. Today was about making sure the last door slammed shut, forever. I grabbed a plain manila envelope from my nightstand. Inside were copies of all the evidence Rick had compiled. Photos, screenshots, a complete and undisputed timeline of Emily's destruction of our marriage, formatted cleanly and professionally, ready for the final phase. Downstairs, I heard the muted sound of movement, drawers slamming, the front door opening and closing. She was panicking now, trying to pack her life into a few sad suitcases, trying to outrun the collapse she had built with her own hands. I didn't go to her, didn't even glance at her. I slid the envelope into my bag and left the house without a word. The air outside was freezing, the kind that burns your lungs with every breath, but it felt good. Bracing. Real. I drove downtown again, past the same shops and streets where we used to go on lazy Saturdays, pretending we were happy, pretending we were invincible. Every red light, every passing car, peeled away another layer of whatever lingering pity still clung to her name in my mind. By the time I pulled up outside the building, I was ready. It wasn't a courthouse. It was her father's office. The man who had loaned us money for our first down payment. The man who had toasted our engagement with tears in his eyes. The man who thought I was the best thing that ever happened to his little girl. He deserved the truth. All of it. I checked my watch. 9 a.m. sharp. Inside, the receptionist gave me a polite smile, not recognizing me right away. I gave her my name. Her smile faltered when she saw the envelope in my hand. She buzzed me through. Her father, Robert, sat behind a massive oak desk, surrounded by photos of happier times. Emily in her graduation cap. Emily cutting our wedding cake. Emily beaming beside me in 1,000 little frozen lies. He stood when he saw me, concern etched into every line on his weathered face. "Son," he said, voice low and cautious. "What's this about?" I set the envelope gently on the desk between us. "You should know what your daughter's been doing," I said. "You should know the truth before she spins you whatever story she's cooking up." He stared at the envelope like it might bite him. I didn't stay to watch him open it. Didn't need to. As I turned to leave, I heard the faint sound of paper rustling. Then silence. Heavy, drenched in disbelief. By the time I got back to my car, my hands were steady, my breathing calm. Another door closed behind her. Another bridge burned. I spent the rest of the day at Nate's place. We finalized the last few filings, ensuring every I was dotted, every T crossed. Everything bulletproof. Everything inevitable. Mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Rick." She's trying to lawyer up. Got her dad on the phone yelling at her in the background. "You want me to stay on it?" I smiled grimly. "No," I texted back. "Let her drown." Because there was no lifeline strong enough to pull her out now. She hadn't just betrayed a marriage. She hadn't just laughed at the man who built a life with her. She had lied to everyone. Her family, her friends, the world. And now that same world was folding in on her. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to slam a single door. I had already won. All that was left now was to watch her lose everything, piece by crumbling piece. The next morning, the real fallout began. It started with a single knock on the door, loud, sharp, impatient. I was in no hurry to answer it. I let it pound a second time before strolling casually across the living room and swinging it open. There she was, Emily, but not the Emily I'd married. Not even the Emily who had smirked behind my back while she tore our marriage apart. No, this was something else. Her hair was messy, her eyes red and swollen, dark circles bruising the delicate skin underneath. She was gripping her phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "You set them on me," she hissed the second I opened the door, her voice cracking between rage and desperation. "You sent the evidence to my father." I leaned casually against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Correction. I gave him the truth. What he decided to do with it was his call." "You humiliated me," she shrieked, stepping forward like she meant to shove me, but stopping short when she saw how still I was. "No, Emily," I said, my voice calm, cold, final. "You humiliated yourself." I just turned on the lights so everyone could see it. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but there was no real sorrow behind them. Just the pure, ugly panic of someone realizing the ground they thought was solid had been paper-thin ice all along. "My parents cut me off," she whispered, almost disbelieving. They said they're done with me. She choked. That I'm a disgrace." I shrugged. "Sounds about right." Her mouth worked uselessly, trying to form words that could undo the avalanche bearing down on her. "I didn't think it would matter," she cried suddenly, throwing her arms wide. "It was just flirting. It didn't mean anything." I chuckled then, low, humorless. "Flirting? Emily, you weren't flirting. You were busy treating our marriage like a revolving door. Trainers, bartenders, random suits. How many, Emily? How many strangers did you let into the life we built?" Her face crumpled, but I pressed on, relentless. "You laughed about me, mocked me to your sister, talked about how pathetic I was, like I was some joke you had to put up with." I stepped closer, letting her see it in my eyes, the part of me she would never touch again. "You didn't just betray me. You tried to erase me." She let out a soft sob, crumpling onto the front step like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "Please," she whimpered. "Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll do anything." "You had every chance to fix it," I said, stepping back. "Every chance to be honest. To be better." I paused, savoring the moment, watching her finally understand. "But you didn't want better," I finished. "You wanted easy. You wanted more." She clutched at her chest like the weight of it all was crushing her. "You have 48 hours to get out," I reminded her, my voice hardening. "That was generous. You're lucky I don't have the locks changed today." "I have nowhere to go," she gasped. "You took everything from me." I shook my head slowly. "No, Emily. You threw everything away. I just made sure you couldn't pretend otherwise." She stayed there, broken, as I closed the door in her face. Not with a slam, not with anger. Just a slow, quiet finality. A door shutting forever. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the stillness settle around me like a second skin. Down the street, a delivery truck rattled past. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. The world kept turning. And Emily, for the first time, had no place in it anymore. Tomorrow, she'd be gone. Tomorrow, the last traces of her lies would be scrubbed clean. And I would be free. Utterly, completely free. I woke up the next morning to sunlight spilling through the windows, the kind of clear, golden light that almost feels like a fresh start. I didn't rush. I didn't even check my phone. Instead, I brewed a slow cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, my table now, in my home, and let the peace soak into my bones. At exactly 9 a.m., the moving truck pulled up, right on schedule. I stayed inside, out of sight, as two bored-looking guys hopped out of the cab and started hauling her things down the driveway. Suitcases, boxes, a few garbage bags stuffed full of clothes and makeup. Everything she could grab in her panicked rush to salvage something from the wreckage she caused. I caught a glimpse of her through the blinds. Emily, standing there on the front lawn, arms wrapped around herself, eyes hollow, face pale. She looked like a woman scraping the bottom of a life she thought would never end. No heels today. No red lipstick. No triumphant, mocking smile. Just a broken, shivering wreck in cheap sneakers and an old hoodie. She kept looking back at the house, like she couldn't believe she was really leaving it behind. Like she couldn't comprehend that this was how it ended, not with a dramatic fight, not with her walking out victorious, but with her being quietly, methodically erased. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring every second. It took less than an hour for them to load her entire life into that truck. Pathetic, really, how small it all looked once it was packed up. How insignificant. When the last box was shoved inside, she stood there a moment longer, her hand resting against the door frame, as if she was waiting for something. A second chance. A miracle. A final act of mercy that would let her step back inside and pretend none of it ever happened. But miracles are for the faithful. And Emily had gambled all her faith away on cheap lies and cheaper men. Finally, she turned away. The truck rumbled to life. She climbed into her battered sedan, a car I had signed over to her out of sheer spite, and drove off without so much as a glance back. No drama. No screaming. Just the quiet, devastating realization that she had lost. And that I wasn't coming after her. I waited until the dust settled, until the sound of her engine disappeared into the distance, before I stepped outside. The driveway was empty now, except for a few stray scraps of trash that had fallen out of her bags. I bent down, picked up a cracked picture frame, one of our old wedding photos, the glass shattered into 1,000 tiny shards, and dropped it into the trash without a second thought. It felt good. It felt right. By noon, a locksmith arrived. Fresh locks. New keys. Every entryway scrubbed clean of her fingerprints. Every trace of her erased. By evening, the house was silent in a way it hadn't been in years. Not cold. Not lonely. Just free. I sat on the back porch with a beer, watching the sunset bleed across the sky. No anger. No regret. Only a calm, deep certainty that I had done exactly what needed to be done. She had laughed at me behind my back, mocked me, used me, and in the end, she had left with nothing. No house, no money, no reputation, not even a name anyone cared to remember. Just an empty car, a handful of suitcases, and the long, brutal road of consequences she had paved for herself. And me? I finally had everything she tried to take away. Peace, freedom, and the kind of quiet satisfaction you can only earn by letting them destroy themselves, while you walk away without a scratch.